It looks cute, soft. For over 100 years, children have hugged this little bear. But behind its sweet, round eyes hides a dark story. It began with a president who refused to shoot a tied-up bear, and ended in a silent war between two countries, two toy makers, and two different truths. This toy was more than just a teddy bear. It became the center of a stolen idea, a copyright battle, and a fight for fame. So, who really created the world's first teddy bear? And why did this innocent toy spark a quiet storm across the globe? The forest was quiet. Cold air moved through the trees, and horses stepped through wet, muddy ground. President Theodore Roosevelt, a strong leader, war hero, and famous hunter, was invited to a special bear hunt. The goal? To give him something to shoot. But the bear they found was not running free. It was tied to a tree, tired and hurt after being chased and bitten by hunting dogs. A guide looked at Roosevelt and said, "Go ahead, Mr. President. The bear is ready." Roosevelt stepped forward. He looked at the animal. Its chest moved up and down, its eyes filled with pain, but not fear. Then, he did something no one expected. "No," he said firmly. "That's not real hunting." He lowered his rifle and walked away. Everyone was surprised. This was Theodore Roosevelt, the Rough Rider, a man who once charged in a battle on horseback. But this time, he refused to shoot a helpless animal. A few days later, in Washington, D.C., a cartoon appeared in the Washington Post. It was drawn by Clifford Berryman, a popular political cartoonist. The drawing showed Roosevelt in the forest, his hand raised to say no, and in front of him, a small bear tied to a tree. The title of the cartoon? Drawing the Line in Mississippi. It was just a cartoon, but people saw it and they loved it. Roosevelt was no longer just a tough president. He was now a symbol of kindness and fairness. Children pointed at the bear. Mothers smiled at the story. The cartoon spread quickly. For that time, it went viral. And in a small candy shop in Brooklyn, a man named Morris Michtom and his wife saw the cartoon. And from that moment, a small idea was born, an idea that would become the world's most famous toy, and would also start a quiet war between two continents. What began as a moment of mercy would soon become the world's sweetest battlefield. But who was the first to bring the little bear to life? The answer depends on who you ask, because far from the Mississippi woods, in two different parts of the world, two people had the same idea. They didn't know each other, but they would soon fight over history itself. In a small shop that sold candy and everyday goods, a Russian immigrant named Morris Michtom worked with his wife, Rose. Their table was full of lollipops, postcards, and a few handmade toys. But on that night, something new appeared. Morris opened the newspaper and looked at the cartoon of President Roosevelt refusing to shoot the bear. There was something special about it. It felt warm, kind, strong. He pointed to the cartoon and asked Rose, "Do you think children would love a toy like this?" That night, Rose sewed a small brown bear using soft cloth. Morris added black button eyes and a simple nose made from thread. They named it Teddy's Bear. They placed it in their shop window. The next morning it was sold, and soon, more and more people came asking for the bear. But Morris never filed a patent. He only wrote a polite letter to President Roosevelt, asking if he could use the name Teddy. Roosevelt gave him an informal yes. No contract, no paperwork. He thought kindness was enough. But in business, kindness is rarely protected. Across the ocean, a young man named Richard Steiff was sketching bears at the local zoo. He was the nephew of Margaret Steiff, a woman who made stuffed animals from her small home, even though she lived with a disability. She made cats, horses, rabbits. But Richard had a new dream. He wanted to create a real-looking bear, with arms and legs that could move, with joints like a real animal. Not just a soft toy, but a moving, lifelike bear. In 1903, Richard took his bear design to the World's Fair in Leipzig. An American toy buyer saw it. and ordered 3,000 units. Suddenly, the Steiff bear, once ignored in Germany, became a global sensation. Michtom and Steiff had never met, but they created similar bears in the same year, with the same inspiration. Michtom was fast, practical, and focused on the market. Steiff was careful, detailed, and focused on design. As the teddy bear spread across the world, one big question started to rise. Who really invented the first teddy bear? There was no patent, no legal proof. Only one thing was certain: big money was now involved, and history would be written by the winner. The world had fallen in love with a little brown bear. Children slept with it. Parents bought it as birthday gifts. Toy stores couldn't keep up with the demand. But behind that cute smile, two names were quietly fighting. In Brooklyn, Morris Michtom watched his small shop become busy and crowded. What started as one handmade bear turned into hundreds. He and his wife started a company called Ideal Novelty and Toy Company. Every bear carried a label, Teddy's Bear, inspired by President Roosevelt. The name Teddy was powerful. It wasn't just a toy anymore. It became a symbol of American pride. In a small German town called Gingen, Richard Steiff worked in his family's workshop. His bear, built with moving joints and realistic design, was very different from Michtom's. It looked almost alive. After the success at the World's Fair in Leipzig, orders came in from across the world, especially from America. His company, Steiff, began exporting bears globally. Each bear had a signature mark, Knopf im Ohr, a metal button in the left ear, showing it was original Steiff. In Germany, the bear wasn't called Teddy. It was known as the Steiff bear, a luxury toy, expensive and exclusive. There were no patents, no official copyright, and no legal agreement between the two sides. And that was the problem. Without a court, only public opinion decides. And public opinion can be bought. The two creators started a quiet war, using ads, labels, and storytelling. In America, posters said, "Teddy's Bear, the original, made with American spirit." In Europe, catalogs claimed, "The authentic Steiff bear, finest German craftsmanship." There were even rumors. One copied the other. Roosevelt supported Michtom. Steiff was actually the first. Two worlds were colliding. America sold a story. Germany sold quality. And both sides wanted to win. Strangely, Roosevelt never said who really made the first bear. He gave no speech, no official letter. He stayed quiet. Maybe he didn't know. Or maybe he didn't want to choose. He gave the bear its name, but never said who gave it its shape. In the middle of all this, branding, buttons, and business, something was forgotten. The children. They didn't care about names. They just want a soft bear to hug, to sleep with at night, to hold when they felt scared. The hands that held the bear were innocent, but the hands that made it were not. As years passed, people got confused. Historians asked, who was first? But many documents were lost, and newspapers preferred the Roosevelt story, simple, sweet, patriotic. In the end, the world chose one version. Only one name would stay in the history books. More than 100 years have passed, but the little bear is still here, in a child's bedroom, on the shelf of a souvenir shop, inside glass cases at toy museums, and in the arms of a newborn baby who can't even say Teddy. But one big question still hangs in the air. Who really created the teddy bear? And why doesn't the world seem to care? At the beginning of the 20th century, two men made the same toy. Morris Michtom from Brooklyn, New York. Richard Steiff from Gingen, Germany. Both of them had a simple dream, to create something that children could hold and love. But as the years went on, their dream became something much bigger. The teddy bear was no longer just a toy. It became a global product, a symbol of comfort, and a nostalgic item sold for very high prices. Michtom, once a small candy shop owner, built a major company, Ideal Novelty and Toy Company, one of the biggest toy producers in America. He wasn't a billionaire, but he lived well. The teddy bears from Ideal were famous. They were loved, sold in huge numbers. But over time, his name started to fade. On the other side of the world, Richard Steiff the hard-working nephew of Margaret Steiff, continued perfecting his bears. He studied bear anatomy. He made movable arms and legs. He created bears that looked real, not cartoonish. The Steiff bear became a piece of art. Not just a toy, but a symbol of quality. British royals had their own collections. Some Steiff bears were sold in auctions for more than $2 million. And in every museum that displays classic teddy bears, you will find one name written in gold: Richard Steiff, the original creator of the teddy bear. But what about Morris Michtom? Toy museums in Germany, the UK, and even the US say that Steiff was the first to make a teddy bear. Michtom is often missing or mentioned only in footnotes, even though he got the idea from the Roosevelt cartoon, made the first bear inspired by that story, gave a toy its name, Teddy's Bear, received permission from the president himself. Still, he never filed a patent. He never wrote a book about it. And President Roosevelt? He never said Michtom's name in public. He gave the bear its name, but not the man who gave it its face. History does not always remember the first. History remembers the story that's easiest to tell. A president, a small bear, a toy that made children smile. That's what people liked. But the truth? Behind that soft smile was a real fight, business competition, no legal protection, and two men who never got to share their credit. The softer the toy, the harder the truth behind it. During his lifetime, Theodore Roosevelt was known for speaking his mind. He wrote books, gave speeches, and sent hundreds of letters. But about the teddy bear? Nothing. Not a word about Michtom. No official thanks. No credit. No clear answer. Why? Did he forget? Did he think it didn't matter? Or did he stay silent on purpose? The teddy bear became famous not because people knew its history, but because they loved how it made them feel. In a world full of war, fear, and sadness, this little toy gave comfort. Children didn't care who made it. They just wanted a friend to sleep with, a toy to hold when they felt scared, something small to love. The hands that held the bear were innocent, but the hands that made it were invisible. Yes, both companies made a lot of money. Ideal Toy Company in America grew huge. Steiff in Germany became a luxury brand. But in the end, only one name survived in museums and history books. Not Michtom's. Even today, if you Google who invented the teddy bear, the first name you'll see probably isn't his. The teddy bear still exists, still sold, still loved, still hugged. But for those of us who care about where things come from, this story leaves a bitter taste. The kindest toy in the world was born from a story that's not so kind. Maybe the teddy bear was made for children, but its legacy was owned by adults with lawyers, labels, and silence. The teddy bear is still here, in bedrooms, in museums, in our memories, but the truth behind it quietly disappeared